Are you All right, welcome back. I'm here with my buddy Ryan, and we're about to show you the exact reason why you want to maintain your vehicle, especially a BMW. We're going to be working on a buddy's E90 335, and we're going to show you exactly why you need to be on top of maintenance. Let's get going. All right, so first thing we see, fucking filthy. Okay, well, right here you can see there's obviously an oil leak from some time from the oil filter housing. Holy shit. It's all down the front of the engine. Look at that. Yeah. You see how far it is?
Yeah. And
look at it.
It's caked on there. It's been there for a while.
Oh, it's caked on.
Look at the alternator.
Hold on. I'm going to get a screwdriver. I want to scrape that. When you have this caked oil on. Look at it. Oh! Okay, well, there's a chunk that just fell on the belt. Look at this. You see this? The belt kind of looks okay, but you know what? There's so much grime and shit. What's the first thing you notice when you look in there?
Chunks.
Yeah, chunks, literally.
Well, even on the cap here.
Like carbon or just cooked oil?
Cooked oil, that looks like. It's like hard.
Look at it. Look at this. What the hell? It kind of looks like sealant.
It feels like it's like silicone.
PSA, don't buy neglected BMWs, drive them until they break, and then fucking blame the manufacturer for you getting a bad one.
What's the kilometers on this though?
Two something. But that's the thing, if you maintain them, they're fine.
Yep.
Like, surprisingly, this doesn't even have wastegate rattle. Like, it's way past due needing TLC. I bet you it needs a valve cover. All right. So first things first, get a T20. Start removing stuff out of the way. So we're going to start with taking the dual cone intake off. Oh my God, look at that. They're like plugged solid. Maybe I should just clarify. I'm not talking shit about the owner by any means. All I'm saying is a little bit of maintenance and service goes a long way. Oh my God, the O-ring's blown out. Okay. Zero maintenance. Real HKS. Without the O-ring. There's no O-ring in that thing. Like when your oil starts to look like graphite lubricant.
Yeah.
I think you got a problem. Oh, there's just pools in here. Hello, darkness, my old friend. The nut f***ed off again. So, let me see. I think that's pretty well it. We don't have to like pull it too far off.
Yeah, it's just all these little vacuum lines and stuff here.
Get over here.
I might have to unplug this guy.
Yeah. Wow, he opened it up and it just stinks.
Yeah. Oh. Ooh. Ooh. You don't want to look in there.
Oh no. Oh fuck. I just did. Jesus Christ. All right. Let's see if I can get on the intake manifold. Oh well. Okay.
Yeah. Seen better days.
Okay, so the reason you need to move the intake manifold is this bolt right here will end up being the entire reason this whole thing has to come off. So with the intake manifold in place, you can't actually reach this bolt. So we're going to start by taking this bolt off. We're going to put the manifold back in place so no shit falls into the runners, just kind of ironic. And we're going to replace this entire oil filter housing because I don't have that BMW tool. We're going to get a bit creative. So on this installment of It's Not Stupid If It Works, BMW cap versus seat clamp.
So be careful not to crack it.
Ha, ha, ha. Get inventive. It's the epitome of BMW ownership.
MacGyver.
Yeah. When I hear somebody laughing, I just assume that they're laughing at the junk I work on. So these bolts, on some models, these are actually aluminum. Fortunately, this one is steel. So These can be a bit tricky. So when you take the 3 of these out, they're actually going to be different lengths. So what I'm going to do with the other 2 is mark them with a paint pen just to make sure I know which one goes where. Okay, so bolt out. Let's try and wedge this thing back in. It should be a lot easier now, actually. Okay. Now that we got seemingly the scariest and shittiest part out of the way, I kind of don't want to look at the side.
I was just thinking the same thing. And then the filter. It's the guess of when the filter was changed last. Because it looks like it's sucked in.
Oh. It's collapsed.
Yeah. Oh.
Holy shit. So it's the same kind of chunks that we saw inside the valve cover. This is a perfect example of lack of maintenance. I've never seen red O-rings either.
No.
I have a bad feeling this is like a
It's
Fram
a cheap old
filter.
kit. Yeah.
So you can see where the actual filter looks like it's actually collapsing itself.
Starts to suck itself in because the oil plugs up the filter.
Yeah. Sometimes with certain filters, if you install them a little bit too aggressively, the pleats, so in between here, the pleats can collapse. That doesn't look like it's being collapsed. That just looks like it's fucking old. Ready?
Yeah, look at it in there.
Look at that.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was just looking at.
Stripper glitter 2.0. It's not much, but you still shouldn't see it. Like, hold on. Look how disgusting that is.
You know what it reminds me of? That Moana, the movie for the kids.
Yeah.
That, what's his name? The big turtle.
Yeah.
It's so shiny. Like everything's sparkling.
So because the housing is actually full of oil, all I'm going to use is a sacrificial Windex container. Every time I do this, it feels like I'm milking a cow. Like that.
Until the oil stops going through there because it's plugged with metal.
You should be doing an oil change after you do the oil filter housing. I was not supplied oil, nor was I supplied coolant. So I'm just going to go with it.
Which we found out there was a apparent leak anyways.
Yeah, there's a apparent leak anyways.
Tops up anytime.
Look at that. Oh, for fuck's sakes. It's like mixing.
Mixing paint.
Funny enough, so when you end up doing this, on the N55s, half the time, they spin bearings when you change the oil filter housing gasket, and you don't pull the clips to the injector plugs. So you start it, and the theory is it actually causes a bit of a air pocket or a cavitation in the oil. The oil filter housing and the oil cooler.
Just sucks it up. Doesn't allow it to circulate.
So it starts dry and it ends up running dry, and then you have a much bigger problem. Well, you bought an N54 to begin with. N55, these are good. These are typically good. This one's not good, but they're typically good.
Are we betting if there's any coolant in the lines?
Drum roll, please.
See if there's anything at all. It makes it easier if there isn't, I guess.
Okay, what's your bet, Ryan? Is there any coolant in it?
Yeah, maybe a drop. Probably not much. Depends on when.
Let's open this.
Yeah, when was it topped up last? Yeah. That's black, so you can't
2 to
see
3
it anyway.
years ago. Is it? Oh, it's full. It's overfilled.
Yeah.
There might be coolant.
It might be.
So I'm not too worried about coolant spilling because the belt and everything is going to be changed anyways. This is going to spill a bit of oil. This is going to spill a bit of oil. We're just going to spray down the entire front of the engine with brake clean. So if this drips a little bit of coolant, it's green.
It definitely is.
It's going right on the floor. There's a lot more in there than I thought. I think this was changed at one point, right? Because these bolts are over torqued.
Yeah.
All right, so once you've taken the rad hose off, spilled coolant everywhere, now we're gonna take the Mickey Mouse flange off. And again, we're not too worried about the coolant spilling a little bit. Granted, it was more than I expected, but we're gonna be putting new coolant in and we're gonna be changing everything on the front of the engine anyway. You saw that, right? It was loose.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that's their coolant leak.
Probably.
The hose clamp was loose because these usually have like a spring clamp.
Yeah.
not a hose clamp for this exact reason. All right. A little bit more coolant. So I think I found the coolant leak. So see the O-ring, it's actually way, way, way bigger than it should. So what happened is, and this is a perfect example of why you're supposed to lubricate this ahead of time. So you lubricate it so that it doesn't get caught and roll. So this is exactly what had happened. Is you can see here, the O-ring ended up rolling over the flange because there was too much friction and caused a coolant leak in the front of the motor. And it could have been avoided, just a little bit of lubricant. If you don't have Vaseline, just spit on it and wiggle it in. So I think we usually give this a little, oh, okay.
Or just touch it.
It's so flat. Like it's so flattened out. Look at it.
Yeah.
Oh, look how hard it is. Look how hard.
Yeah.
Like it's just breaking
falling apart.
Like, well, you can even look at it. Like,
yeah, it's all brittle.
Like if you had a Toyota or something, fine, I get it. You know, very seldom do they break. But for stuff like this, like you can see right here where the oil goes, it's stained the aluminum.
Yeah.
Like the oil's burnt so bad. Oh, I'm getting it off. That just basically stained the aluminum. Okay, so you can kind of see on the flange here where it ends up showing the imprint of the old gasket. So what we're going to do, you try to catch your nail, and you can kind of catch it a little bit. So we're going to take a razor blade, we're going to clean this up real nice. And again, it looks like I stabbed the vehicle, I guess. So there's coolant and everything all over the place. It's not a big deal. We're going to be changing everything. Everything is going to be sprayed down with brake clean. The most important thing is cleaning this up real nice. Spray brake clean up and around. And then once it's all done, I'm going to take it to the car wash. I'm going to degrease the entire engine bay and pressure wash it. So it'll end up looking squeaky clean. It's going to be like polishing a turd, I guess. Like, we'll go with it. All right, so after a can and a half of brake clean and a little bit of elbow grease, this is what it should look like. Now, it's not perfect. This is all just staining from before, but I think everyone can admit it looks a hell of a lot better. So what we're gonna do, because the O-ring on the back here, it ended up breaking. So you probably saw where the O-ring was on there and it had rolled over because it was damaged. I do have another one of these laying around. So I'm gonna steal the O-ring and repurpose it for their vehicle. So brand new, fresh O-ring. We'll just pop it in here. Perfect. That'll actually work pretty good. So Vaseline, and then we'll put it in. For this one here, we have one of these from Euro Parts. Some people don't like Euro Parts. I haven't really had any issues with them. So I think it kind of depends on what part you end up getting. So for this one, we line it up, push it in here. Now you can see this is way softer. And compared to the one that came out. Now, whereas the other one, you could just barely catch it with your fingernail. When I press this all in from a side view, you can actually see there's a fair bit of a lip here. So what I'm gonna do when I go to put it in, I'm gonna use some good old gasket maker, just some of the gray stuff, even the black, it'll be fine for the temperature. Give it a little skim up and around the entire gasket, put it back in, torque it to spec, gonna be done to do. Okay, change of plans. So what I'm gonna do, because the O-ring's a little bit too big, I'm gonna put a hose clamp around it. So what this will do is this will end up squishing down the O-ring. So I'm gonna heat it up with a heat gun, just so it's a little bit softer. I'm gonna squish it down with the hose clamp. I'm gonna remove the hose clamp and then quickly put it into the flange. So this will probably work out the best. Typically when you change injectors, they have like an O-ring, so you have a similar issue there. So what you would end up doing is you put a cap over top, So this is going to simulate like a cap essentially. So as soon as you take it off, pop it in, should be good. All right, so it's warmed up. Yes! Like a fucking charm. All right, let's get it in, please. All right. So for these, stuff like this, I always like to finish by hand. All right, time to put this back. Okay, so as I did, I marked 2 bolts here, so that would designate the longer bolt. And like this. All right, give it a couple of minutes to skim over. We'll give it a quick torque. What we'll do is we'll alternate, just because when you tighten the one side, it'll probably loosen on the other. Just to make sure it's nice and even. Okay, it doesn't look like it, but the flange of the manifold is squeaky clean. This is the last time the intake manifold needs to be touched. All right, let's get this into place. Slide it over the pin here. Thank you, sir. Nice. All right, so I don't pour the oil out everywhere. Use a good old pick. Oh yeah, actually it's a little bit stiff. So walk it around, give it a little bit of oil. A little bit of oil, who am I laughing at or joking? There's so much oil everywhere. One thing I do want to check, the little cage, sometimes it can wiggle free. There's a bit of a bypass valve in it, so you just want to make sure that it's not loose, not overly tight. And then apply enough pressure for it to pop so you don't collapse the filter like some people might do, and throw it in. So we're just gonna put it on loose for now. After we end up changing the belt and there's no risk of anything else contaminating it, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put about 1 liter of oil right through the oil filter housing, just so that the oil pump is primed, and when you start it, you don't need to worry about it spinning a bearing or having an air pocket. So we'll just leave it like this for now. We'll give it some brake clean stuff. Go from there.
The next day.
All right, today's another day. So I took the rad fan out and everything off screen. Didn't think it was worth filming. Did nothing but just piss me off because I got covered in everything. I was gonna bring out the pressure washer, pressure wash down the complete front of the vehicle. Lo and behold, the hoses are frozen. Go figure. Good old Alberta winters and +2, and the hoses are still frozen. So we're gonna do this the shitty way. I'm gonna pull the inlet off, give it a good old wipe down, but at least now I have better access to the whole front of the engine. I'm probably gonna pull off the crank pulley as well. Everything was saturated in oil. It's not the coolant that was leaked on it. It's literally just oil from I don't know how many years of abuse and neglect. So I'm gonna start ripping this apart and see what comes of it. Boom. Oh, no. Don't worry about that. If this said 55, that would be applicable. So this is what we're looking at. Tensioner has 2 pulleys. So it goes around the harmonic balancer, up and over one of the idlers. This has 2 idlers and he only supplied 1, so this is gonna be great. Power steering pump, AC, so it kind of loops up and around. Idler, around the alternator, and then through the tensioner. Now, the one thing to note on 07s, early and late 07s, is the power steering pulley is actually plastic. So when the motor mounts weaken, or if you hit a hard pothole, this pulley can actually contact the subframe and it ends up chipping. So on mine, the outer rib of the pulley actually contacted the subframe. So half of the back of the rib was missing, started to shred the belt. Caught it just in time. I don't know when it had happened, but fortunately, can't remember the name. I want to say it's Hamburg Tuning. They make a heavy duty aluminum one. So you can get the aluminum one. I think it's only 45, 50, 60 bucks. Who knows, inflation, maybe 80 bucks now. Definitely upgrade that one. The rest will clean up really nice. Both idlers I'm going to pull off. So one, I'll put a U on it, one for the lower, upper and lower. I'll see which ones he has. Looks like he only has the one, so I'll have to hope that one of them is okay. So compared to the N55 one, you can see this one's a 1.5 miles long. Let's do a little inspect. No cracking that I see, but it's definitely oil saturated. You can see where all the grime has sat inside the threads. So fortunately, we have a new one of these. Toss that in the junk pile next to the legit HQS, bro. Blow off valve and start taking this apart. And I think it's gonna be a lot of like degrease, brush, brake clean it up as best I can. I don't feel like pulling the inlet, but same thing, like get a big enough toothbrush or something that I can scrub this all down, spray with brake clean and pressure wash it afterwards and go from there. I got it out. Same thing, it's got that spin washer, but as you can see, like even on the backside, like that used to be silver. It's filthy. So you can see, like there's like grit and grime and all over the place. So what we're gonna do is just wait for the degreaser to do its thing. Of course, everything up here is already finished. I'm gonna change the filter, but once this is all set and clean, then we'll get to it. All right, time to put this jalopy back together. So similar to what we did on the X5 with the brake clean, I'm gonna spin each pulley and give it a nice liberal amount of brake clean, including the crank pulley. So for the crank pulley itself, I'm using a 7/8 socket, and what I'm going to do is put it right on the end of the crank pulley bolt itself, and you're going to be fighting compression, but I want to be super picky with this. So I'm going to spin it and just spray it down with brake clean. Get a relatively clean rag, and again, bunch it up so you can put it in the ribbing of the pulley. I'm going to push it against the pulley. Ooh, squeaky. Damn, it's clean. See? Takes a bunch of shit right off it. So the one thing to kind of keep in mind is the alternator one, it's actually a clutched pulley. So it should disengage and not spin the alternator, from what I understand, unless it's seized. So if it's seized, you'll actually notice it starts to wobble a bit. This one doesn't look like it's wobbling, but it also doesn't seem to be clutching as it should. It's not double clutching. All right, get our good old compressor. So next thing I noticed is on this coolant hose here, it's disgusting. It's absolutely filthy on the inside. I definitely would want to replace this hose if I was them, but they don't want to. That's good. Put new, fresh gunk in the clean alternator. Why not? Okay, well, it's acceptable to someone's standards, not my standards. All right, so what we're doing is we're grabbing our trusty T50. Since this is the upper one, goes here. Now you gotta be a little bit careful. There's two holes here where you can actually bolt this. And I remember when I did it on my E90 and I couldn't get the belt to fit for whatever reason. Sure enough, it was in the wrong hole. Now, if memory serves me correctly, which it very seldom does, I'm fairly certain that there was actually Loctite on this. So I'll put a tiny bit of Loctite. So I'm just gonna bottom it out just by hand to get it in there. Idler. Okay, take the cap off, place it somewhere where it's probably gonna fall. Spin that bad boy to the bottom. A little bit of Loctite. I'm gonna double check what the torque spec is on these, so don't quote me. I believe it's 24 Newton meters. Okay, thread that one in. Alrighty, next up is this brand new tensioner. So this one actually has a bit of an O-ring on it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna roll that O-ring down, and that'll actually, we won't need Loctite on this one. And as you can see, this one has a nice the pin as well. Makes our life a little bit easier. It goes way in here. This can be a bit of a pain in the ass to kind of get in, but there's a little notch right here near the alternator that helps you guide it. All right, snug down. Everything is looking wicked. Okay, so for the tensioner itself and the idlers, I was reading online, they usually say it's about 25 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. We're not gonna do that. So of course the wonderful people online said the 20 some odd Newton meters plus 90 degrees is equating to approximately 40 Newton meters. So for good measure, we're gonna do 42.4 because math is hard. Nice. Bam! Salt Bay ain't got shit on me. Next up, we stare at it aimlessly, thinking, what's next? I don't know. I just make it look like I sort of know what I'm doing. All right, next up, we get our good old belt routing because I think we're at that point. Pull this AC line out. Now, everything is nice and squeaky clean, but you don't want it to touch anything it shouldn't be touching. Hardest part will be near the bottom, so harmonic balancer itself. All right, up and over the idler. All right, power steering. Up and around the AC, yes. So what I try to do is I try to pull it taut each time you get it up and around. Take the slack out of it, because it can get to be a bit of a pain in the ass as soon as it gets near the tensioner. And then when you're done, you realize you didn't even need that because you've done this way too many times and you're glutton for punishment. But kids at home, you get creative. Put those art skills to use. Okay, double check and triple check. So like I did on the Buddies X3, what you want to do is you want to make sure that it's centered on each of the idlers before you take the tension off the tensioner. That's the difference with a brand new tensioner. It's holy shit, that spring is something else. Wiggle the pin out. Hopefully it doesn't snap your fucking arm off. Holy shit. Okay, the other one was just weak sauce. This one is fucking habanero. All right, next up, we're gonna turn it over by hand just a little bit. Okay. Nice. You know what? So it doesn't have a chance to piss everywhere. Put this coolant pipe back in. Clip it in. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. So reach around. It'll actually sit in the recess when it's actually in properly. So for the front of the turbo, it has this donut gasket. I'm going to give it a nice clean, and then it goes into the inlet and then onto the front of the turbo. All right. So you got the end of the inlet here. That's it. It literally just wedges in, and this, a little bit of effort, goes on the snout of the turbo. I've never put back an OEM one. Usually I've replaced them with silicone units. Yeah, inlet's on. Hoses are where they need to be. All right, so for hose clamps, I don't like using ratchets on them. I try to tighten them as tight as I can by hand, especially with a screwdriver. I figure any more than that, and generally you're gonna break the hose clamp or you're gonna have a bigger problem. Granted, at the same time, I apparently don't know my own strength, and I've stripped and broken hose clamps doing the same thing. So just be a little bit careful. Okay, so that's good there. AC line back in. Damn, that inlet looks like it's brand new now. Okay, what's next? I think next is the red fin. Hello, red fin. Hola, amigo. Now again, you gotta be very, very careful because this line's actually connected to that port on the upper radiator hose. Pop the J-pipe back in place. It's not the end of the world if you forget these. Fuck. I just washed you. Yes. Yes, go through the coolant. Yes. Are you Where's my fucking lighter? Stop fucking around. All right, this is getting really old really fast. So after the cap for the second time decides it wants to go play Plinko all the way down into the engine bay and fall on the dirtiest part of the ground, wipe it down for the third or fourth or fifth time here. I swear to God, you fucking fall. You fucking stupid piece of shit. All right, once you've had a moment to calm down, you can start to put it back together. So I think we're gonna do this last. Get rid of this. So what I was gonna do is I was gonna pressure wash the charge pipe, but don't think I have enough time to let it dry. So I'm just gonna clean it out a bit. I mean, there's oil in there, but kind of is what it is at this point. Okay, so if you remember at the beginning, there was an oil leak from the charge pipe here because the O-ring's kind of flat. This one is super, super, super hard. It has a couple of cracks too. When you change the oil filter, sometimes you'll get a little baggie that has a bunch of the O-rings. Typically it'll have the 2 O-rings, so the tiny little one and the one for the top. Now, I had ordered one of the O-rings for the charge pipe, I don't know how long ago. It was definitely some time ago, and I had it sitting here. So I got it a bit confused with this particular O-ring. Now, a good tip is that this from BMW for the charge pipe is 40 bucks, but it's the same size as the one for your oil filter. So if you go out and you get a $12 oil filter, the O-ring is the exact same. So we're gonna install it dry. And because these can be a pain in the ass to install, I tend to use a fair amount of Vaseline on this one. So you put it up and on the O-ring. Now there's the cavity or the flange that the O-ring sits in. So just get it all nice and lubed up. When the O-ring sits against the throttle body, that's what actually has it seal. But I even put it just on the inside here, just to make it a little bit easier to get on there. All right, so what I found that works the best is wiggle the T-bolt up and over, wiggle it past the inlet, just under. This one here has the bypass valve mod, so you use, I think, furniture caps. I think it's a 5/8 furniture cap. So you bottom it out there, and you can rotate it down. So when you rotate it down, you can sneak it under the throttle body and under the hose, and then rotate it back up. There we go. Now these here, I don't know why people call them, some people call them the Jesus clip. I don't know why. I've only heard that a handful of times. The only thing I can think of is, Jesus Christ, the charge pipe won't fit on, or Jesus Christ, that thing's expensive when you break it. So let's try to not do either. So you got it kind of into place. Wiggle the charge pipe up. Actually, the O-ring's already holding it. Give it a lock and a wiggle. Mint. So on the back here, I couldn't show it to you, but there's the T-map sensor. Just push it back into place and then come to the front here and focus on the J-pipe. All right, so this one here, poke it in place with the flathead. It's usually a 10 mil for most T-bolts. So what I try to do is I try to have it face the other way, so it's a straight shot to it. So the lower J-pipe, or whatever you want to call it, I believe it's plastic. So you want to be a little bit careful. T-bolts can be pretty serious. When you torque them down, they clamp pretty good, so they don't have the give like most worm clamps. So when you snug them down, they don't care. Like, they'll go super tight, they'll deform the aluminum pipe, they'll deform the plastic. I try to tighten these about as much as a spark plug. You can usually feel where they get pretty taut. All right, where are those filthy, disgusting intakes? So for good measure, these are kind of gross. I tend to use glass cleaner for a lot more in the garage than I expect. Ironically, not just for glass. Try to avoid using it on just bare paint. I've had it where it started to take a finish off. But for this, when you don't need to use brake clean, it works in a pinch. Now what I've found is these inlets, they kind of sit on one another. So there's kind of a happy median between which one presses on which one. So I always found that they sit like this, so there's no abnormal tension, they don't bounce around. They sit nice and snug. Last but not least, let me give this a little wipe. All right, because I'm about to put the cover back on, what I want to do is I want to give it just a quick once over. So again, nice belt, nice inlet, nice, just a little bit of spritz on it. Cap, nice, rear inlet, front inlet. Oh, it's good. I know we need to do this. So, kind of counterproductive to have something so filthy on it. I'm gonna go wash it quick. So this here, first glance, it might look like Pennzoil Euro 540, but don't be fooled. This is the communal oil jug. And you may ask, what the hell are you talking about? This has probably 4 or 5 different types of oil in it that I don't know what the weight is. If I had to guess, it was somewhere between 13W36. So we're gonna put some 13W36 into here, just so it has its prime, and nothing crazy. It doesn't take a whole lot, but you wanna try to aim right down the center till it backs up. That's literally it. Yes, very nice. So it's very important to tighten the O-ring and tighten it as much as you can by hand. Generally, these will bottom out like right there. It's pretty well bottomed out. Now, once upon a time, I had the tool. I lent it to an apparent friend, and rather than giving it back, the friend went to being an acquaintance. Right. So what I like to use, because I don't have that tool, is a C-clamp. Now make sure both are on one of the flat portions of the lid. That way it won't slip. Right. Clean engine cover back on, filthy vehicle. Good old funnel, we're gonna fill her up. Now, I know what you guys are gonna say. Tony, that's the wrong bloody coolant for your BMW. I know it's the wrong coolant, but it's the coolant that I was given to put in the vehicle. Sounds like they're gonna be selling it anyways. Go figure. BMW is not reliable. It's a piece of crap, it's breaking down. There's oil everywhere, it's leaking coolant, it's leaking engine oil. This is supposed to be a good car. It's nothing but a piece of crap. Oh my God, I'm so f***ing over it. Why do people buy this junk? It's a piece of shit. Everything's going wrong. Right, so right there is the little stick. So when the stick is just above the frame of the coolant reservoir, it's considered full. So we're gonna leave it like that. We're gonna run the coolant bleed procedure and go from there. Okay, well, cross my fingers and hope this heap starts. I'll leave it recording just in case it decides to explode. Hey! It's alive! Man, this thing just needs to be put out of its misery. Give it a couple ceremonial revs. Yes. Yes. So what did we learn today? We learned that BMWs can be a pain in the ass to work on, especially ones that are neglected. But along with that, the other thing we learned is it's all about maintenance. Like, this wouldn't be nearly as bad had it have been maintained. It's running fine now. It needs a lot of work. Whether they want to put the money into it, I don't know. That's not my call. It's going to be running good as best as I can make it run for now. They brought it to me with one issue, fixed it as best I can. I know everything I did is flawless. I took a little bit of time. I had to degrease, pressure wash the entire front end of the vehicle. I wasn't going to settle for any less. Like, it's all about attention to detail. At the end of it, these are good vehicles. Like, anybody that tells you that these aren't good vehicles, especially the N54, I had mine. I loved it. It was a fantastic vehicle. You know, I was always on top of the maintenance and upkeep. It ran great, sounded great. Good vehicles. Sometimes it's just down to shit owners. That's all for today. I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to put it outside, clean the mess I got going on here in the garage, and see you guys on the next one.